Hey everyone, it's Kelsey. This is Essentially Book. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today, and today is the last day of Bookmas. Filming this many days of content has been very hard. I think I should have done a better job scheduling posts in advance because I've been doing like a video a day lately, and that's just not sustainable for me for the life that I live and with working and stuff. So it's just been a lot, but it's been really fun. Future Kelsey, remember to schedule your stuff ahead, because there's a lot of things you can schedule ahead. Anyways, that being said, this has been really fun. It's just a lot of work, and I think I'm just kind of done. December. I read the most books I've ever read in my entire life. A lot of that was because I went on a reading retreat and was able to knock out like 3.5 books. I just had a really good reading month. We were home quite a bit because we had COVID hit our house, all those things. So it just worked, and I'm really excited. It didn't feel like a lot of books. It felt really good for the time. So I'm gonna go through these books that I read. I'm gonna go least favorite, what I enjoyed, and then my favorites, because I had an outstanding reading month. So we will get started with my least favorites. My very first least favorite is Wreck at the Halls by Tessa Bailey. It was awful. I am like hit or miss with Tessa Bailey, but I think I've been more miss lately. I talked about this in the Christmas romance video, but it's about two children of famous pop stars that had a huge falling out. And the whole world wants these pop stars to get back together. And for some reason, it's up to the children to get them back together and to convince them to show up on New Year's Eve to a reunion tour. So the premise is outlandish, but just the names of the main characters are Beat and Melody. And that's about all I need to say about that book. And then my second least favorite, these aren't really ranked necessarily, is The Madness of Crowds. This was still a good book. You know how much I love Louise Penny. My gripe with this was that it was slow and deeper than most. It's also a COVID novel, which I don't know. I read a couple COVID novels this month, and this one just wasn't it for me. But I just didn't really love the heart of the mystery behind this book. And I think there's some good character development in this one. And I think this is kind of one of the filler mystery books for it being an 18-book long series. So it was just not my favorite. I would rank this in probably one of my lower, like on the lower end of all the books in this series. But the cover is gorgeous, like very, very gorgeous. And I do love her immensely. This was just not my favorite one. And then my final least favorite is Galatea by Madeline Miller. This is a short story. I listened to it on the last day of the year, and it was just weird. And Madeline Miller is really good at bringing mythology to life, Greek mythology. But this one, it just didn't sit with me the way Circe or Song of Achilles did, and I just didn't really enjoy it. But it was like a 45-minute audiobook, so it wasn't hard to listen to. All right, and then the books that I enjoyed. First was The Engagement Party by Darby Kane. I read this as a review copy that I got from NetGalley, but it's also gonna be a book club pick for Talk Bookish to Me podcast. And so I wanted to read it for that. And this is just a locked island mystery where a whole bunch of unlikable characters gather because in college they had a friend of theirs die, and the truth unravels because they're locked on this island and things are happening. And if you liked The Last Word by Taylor Adams and then you like The Secret History, I just feel like that comparison works. Once you've read the book, you'll understand. It's not literary like A Secret History or anything, but I just had fun with it. It was an enjoyable read. And then Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. This is the second book in that series. It's probably my least favorite of the three, but I still really liked it. And then The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams is another one that I enjoyed this month. And this is about a list of books that are left in a library. And the main character is Mukesh and Alicia, and they're like two different people grieving different things. And Mukesh is an elder man. Alicia is a younger woman. They connect over reading through this list, and their lives intertwine, and it is a really, really lovely book. I just think this was like too saccharine at the time for me, and I think had I maybe read this in a different season, it would have gotten a higher rating. But it was still, if you like books about books and the power of reading, I would definitely recommend this. This was a modern Mrs. Darcy book that I needed to catch up on this year, and it was really fun. The author is a delight. She has a new book coming out. I'm very excited for that. And then I read The Christmas Appeal. This was another NetGalley arc by Janice Hallett. This goes kind of after The Appeal, if you've read that book, but she's just a really fun mystery writer. This is a novella too, so it's a fast read. It follows the characters from The Appeal as they're putting on a Christmas pantomime and somebody ends up dead, and you're getting the same format as The Appeal where it's mixed media. You're reading all these emails and text strings trying to figure out what happened while the attorneys on the file are also trying to figure that out. So it's just a really fun and fast reading experience. You could read it all year round. It doesn't need to be like a Christmas read necessarily. Then I read Wrapped with a Bow by Lily Vale, and this was just a fun Christmas romance or winter romance, but it's basically, she does the PR for her town and she's trying to secure filming rights on this house that means a lot to her family. And the owner of this house has recently passed away and her nephew comes to live there and sell the house, and he's kind of a Scrooge, a Grinch, and they fall in love. Grumpy Sunshine. It was cute, but that's like all I could really say about it. And then I read Resilient by Brooke Wells. This is another arc that I have on NetGalley and physically, and I talked about this in my reading retreat video, so I'm not gonna go into much detail with it, but it just follows Brooke as she makes her comeback in CrossFit. It's a really fast read. Now I'm going to go and gift this to my gym for other CrossFitters to read. And then I read This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger, and I really liked this, but I didn't love it. And I feel really bad about that, but it is what it is. It didn't hold my attention in the way that I wanted it to. I will still read. He has a new book that just came out. So this isn't a never read this author again. This just wasn't my favorite book amidst all the other books that I read this month. But this is a sweeping novel about a few kids who are at an Indigenous school in Minnesota. Some of them are white, some of them are Indigenous. Something terrible happens, they flee, and they're trying to get to St. Louis, and this follows like the myth of the Odyssey. It is really like about found family and friends and hope when all is lost, and it's just an epic novel. I think too, if I reread this would be something maybe I'll appreciate later as well. And then my final book that I enjoyed is You're the Duke That I Want by Lenora Bell. This was a historical romance, Greece retelling. I had a lot of fun with it, and that's about all I can really say with it because it is a Grease retelling and there are just a ton of fun nods to the actual movie Grease, but set in a historical romance. But there was still stuff to make it not that exactly. I just really enjoyed it. I have a full review up on Instagram, but it was a really fun historical. For the books that I loved this month, very first, The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. I talked about this a few times in other videos during Bookmas, but this just follows a midwife, Martha, as a crime sweeps her community, and she is tasked with bringing what happened to light in a precarious situation in which women are put in Puritan America. And it's just it's based on like a true woman who kept a diary. It is such a good, compelling historical fiction novel. I highly recommend it. And then I read Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. That was a COVID novel that worked for me. I love Tom Patchett. I keep wanting to do that. I love Ann Patchett, and Tom Lake was just a treat. I've talked about this in a few videos, so I won't go into the premise of it, but if you like quiet literary novels, I have to say read Tom Lake. It deserves the hype, and Ann Patchett is a national treasure. And then also, I've talked about this a few times, but A Promised Land by Barack Obama, one of my favorites. I'm not going to explain anything else about it, but I loved it. Finally read The Measure by Nikki Erlich at Jordan and Lena and Gwen, all these people's behest, and it was a treat. It's pretty heavy, so I started it a few times and kept putting it down, but then when I really had time to sink into it and really absorb the story and think about it, I loved it. It follows a whole cast of characters who have a string delivered to their doorstep that tells them how long they'll live. The entire world gets these strings. And you watch how people handle that. And it was very realistic. It shows like from a political perspective, from just like two lovers, from friends, how the military handles it, how jobs handle it, like therapy groups. It was just a really well thought out book. And I really do recommend this to really anyone. It's just a good book about the human experience and humanity at its core. And then I loved Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. That is Lucian and Sloane's story, and I was just waiting for that. That has all the tropes that I love. I talked about it in my reading retreat video, but I adored it. It was an easy 5-star romance. My final book of the year that I loved, and I read this every year, so it's A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I read this every Christmas Eve and Christmas, and it's just something that's like comforting to me, and a book that I think is a good just reminder of what matters. It's not a long book, so it's just I don't know. It's just a Christmas tradition of mine that I really love. And so it gets my like most loved book of the month because it's so nostalgic to me. Those are all 17 books. I know this was a really fast video, but I did talk about a lot of these books in previous videos, so it didn't want to waste your time talking more. Now that I'm done with Bookmas, I'm going to take a little bit of a break, like a week, so you won't see any new content up until the following Sunday. I do have a bonus video that will be coming up with the 25 books I gave 5 stars to, but I'm so thankful for all of you who've stuck around. I gained about 100 new subscribers through this process, so thank you for, if you're new here, I'm super excited you're here. I love reading, I love to talk about books, and I read a little bit of everything, as you could clearly see from my monthly wrap up. So thank you so much for being here. Until the next video, everybody, bye.